Today's topic is a frequently asked question, and that is about choosing the proper field guide. A lot of people, have personal preferences, but they, when they come in, they want to know, what's the right field guide, what's the best field guide. And so I've addressed this topic on a few occasions, but I tried to load one from the past, and the audio was terrible. So I'm going to address the topic again today. So choosing the right field guide. Well, what I like to do when I think of field guides, and then I've been doing this for 35 years in recommending field guides to people via the nature center world that I was in and teaching and things like that, and of course in the retail world here in the store. When I talk to people about field guides, before I go over and pull one off the shelf to show to them, I like to get a couple of things and straightened out first. One, of course, is their level of interest and or knowledge to start with. So, if you're a beginning bird, a very basic person that's just learning about birds and just getting even to know the names and things like that, that influences my recommendation to you. If you're a pretty experienced bird watcher, you've been bird watching and you know quite a bit, then that affects my recommendation on what field guide is the best. And there are lots of different kinds of field guides. There are, classic books, field guides like this. There are also things that like these fold-out guides you can lay on the table and have them all out there in front of you. And some people like those. The difference between kind of beginning field guides and more advanced field guides, of course, a lot of times it's just the sheer number of birds in there. Because a beginning field guide, if it's catered toward a beginning bird watcher, it tends to limit its contents to the birds that you are much more likely to see in your yard or at your bird feeders, because that's where beginning bird watchers do most of their looking. And then once you have kind of gotten hooked on birds via your backyard and your bird feeders, then we want you to get out on trails and go on bird hikes or on your own, hiking at your local nature centers or preserves. And in that case, you're probably going to need a little more advanced guide, one that you can find some birds that are less common. Maybe they don't visit your bird feeders, and maybe you're only there during migration, things like that. Those birds are going to be limited and get bird books that are geared toward beginning bird watchers. So I'm going to take you through my theories of that and which guides I like the best. Let's start with the beginning bird guide. I like, for our area, now remember I'm in Kansas City, so this Birds of Missouri field guide by Tequila is an excellent option. This outsells every bird guide in our store. Oh God, I don't even know, 10, 20 to 1 probably, because it is so well geared for beginning bird watchers. They have great pictures in them, and they also have, it is thumb tabbed by color. So if you're looking for a bird that is blue, then you can thumb tab to the section that is blue or green or red primarily, and then you can look the birds up via there. And and then within the colors, like brown's going to be the biggest, it's organized by the smallest to the largest of those birds in there. So the beginning field guide, and Stan makes one of these books for almost every state in the union. So wherever you're watching this, whether you're on the West Coast or the Northeast or wherever, you can find this guide, this pretty much this series for birds of your area. So it's actually a great book all around for beginners. So I like that series of books by Stan Tequila. They're wonderful depending on where you live. Again, though, they're not inclusive of all the birds you can see there. In the field guide world, remember, to birds, it's no trouble for them to fly across state lines and fly a great distance. They do it all the time. And the big question comes up, well, when I want a better field guide, but it says eastern or western U.S., and I live west of the Mississippi River, so I must be the western guide, right? No. The western for birds is actually the Rocky Mountains. You think from the front range of the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, there are no great barriers there that kind of divides the flight patterns or migration routes for birds. It's the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean is western. From the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean is eastern. So Missouri, right in the middle of the eastern field guide. So if you're buying a bird book that's going to be more inclusive, you want it to be the eastern guide for this area. This is in big letters, Sibley East. And that's us here in this area. But if you live in Utah, then you definitely want a western field guide, because that is the big divider where the birds are going to be very different from the birds, are a lot different. There are going to be some that are on both, but those books will cater to you there. The next biggest decision that needs to be made between east and west, in my opinion, is, are you a fan of photographs or do you prefer artwork? Now, artwork, like David Allen Sibley, who's now, I consider the master of the modern field guide. Roger Tory Peterson was the godfather of American field guide, and his guides are still wonderful. But Sibley's guides are fantastic. The artwork does not vary from bird to bird all the way through. He is as good at drawing hummingbirds as he is at drawing hawks, as he is at drawing shorebirds or anything like that. The flexibility, what I like about the flexibility of an art guide is they tend to have a lot more pictures or variations of the same bird, male, female, young, different plumages, races from different parts of the country, because some birds are paler in part of their range and darker in other parts of their range. And art guides tend to be better at illustrating that. The National Geographic series is really good at doing that. Sibley's is good at doing that. Whereas a photographic guide tends to be limited in the number of pictures in there. And here is something that I've always thought as an educator, and I've seen this over the years, is that I think photographs tend to influence your mind a little more. So when people are looking up pictures of birds in a photographic guide, since it's a photograph of an actual bird, I think people think, well, it has to look exactly like that picture or it's not the bird. And that's simply not true. Just like I said, there's lots of variations in birds' plumages. And I think whenever it's an art book, sometimes the mind will go, well, that's how he drew it. And there could be variations of that, whereas photographs have to be photographs. That's just something that I've noticed over the years whenever talking to people about field guides and showing them field guides. Remember, there's a lot of color variation in birds. There's color variation in humans. So you have light individuals, dark individuals. You look different when you're young than you do when you get older, etc. And birds are no different in that. They have a lot of variations in their plumage. So a good field guide, and the more detailed field guide that you get, is going to help you figure that out. Now, you don't want to start with the most advanced field guide because it can be so overwhelming. There's so many pictures in there. There's so many birds, especially when they put rare birds in there. And my favorite field guide forever and ever has been the National Geographic series. And one of the reasons I like it, because I am an advanced bird watcher, they do include a lot of the rarest birds that have been seen in North America in their books. And I like having those to be able to refer to. But for beginning bird watchers, that can be extremely confusing. I had a phone call one time in Pennsylvania when I was a director of Audubon there, and the guy wanted to know why he had a black-faced grassquit in his backyard in central Pennsylvania. He was looking at a junco, because a junco looks a lot, and grassquits look a lot alike. Now, there are subtle differences, but I knew exactly what field guide he was looking at when he made that phone call, because it was in that field guide and he could see it. Whereas in a beginning field guide, he would have never seen the picture of that grassquit. The grassquits are extremely rare in North America, and when they do show up, they only show up typically in the Florida Keys and maybe in South Florida, scattered, very, very accidental here, and definitely not in Pennsylvania, and definitely not in January, and whenever that phone call was. But when it was just a very dark individual junco that he was looking at. So that can happen, but that's why we're here. We want to teach, and we want you to be able to ask questions. We want you to explore that curiosity. Well, now the internet has changed a lot when it comes to field guides, and there's apps on phones now that are spectacular. And I showed you Sibley's book. Well, Sibley has a great app, and I use it all the time when I'm out with my birding groups. It's easy to pull up a picture on the phone and show it to people. And carrying the field guides is less common than it used to be because of these magical devices called iPhones and cell phones. So that's another avenue. That's probably a whole nother program to do. But choosing the right field guide. Remember, choose for your level of interest and your level of knowledge, and grow with it. Let it grow with it. I don't know a single bird watcher who only has one book. In the old days, we used to call it the bird library in our back seat of our vehicles when we were out bird watching, to have 3 or 4 different field guides, because the art was different in different books, and pictures were different, and we could look, if we were really confused about a bird, we can look it up in different bird books and clarify maybe what we were seeing. So I hope this hasn't been confusing. I hope it's helped. It's a great idea for a program, and lots of questions generated. So please send in ideas for more programs. If you like the programs, please give us a like. Subscribe on YouTube, if you will. That really, really helps us out. And send an idea for more programs. Thank you for that. Come on, let's talk birds.